Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. So today we are discussing something very interesting. I'm actually going to go into my stock portfolio and show you one stock through which I have made 123% return in 1 month's time. Now many of you have been asking me questions, how do I make investments in the stock market and what is the level of analysis that I do. So I thought that this would be an excellent video for us to shoot. And I will continue to make this series every Saturday. So please give it a thumbs up and a like. Depending on the response, I'll continue to shoot such videos. So let's jump right in and I will share my strategy with you. Okay, so which stock am I talking about? So I'm talking about PNB Housing Finance Limited. Now what does PNB Housing Finance Limited does? It gives out commercial real estate loans. It gives out housing loans. It helps big builders execute real estate projects. So it gives out loans. Essentially, that is the nature of the business that PNB Housing Finance is engaged in. So let me first and foremost prove it to you that I actually bought this stock. So here is a small recording of the trading portal from Zerodha where I have captured this video, and you can see the price of my portfolio constantly fluctuating. So this is not a photoshopped image. I actually bought PNB Housing Finance at approximately 374 levels, and now it's trading at 839.45. which gives me an approximate gain of 123%. Now, this is not the best part. The best part is that I was able to make this return in the last approximately 30 days. So this 123% return is not an yearly return, right? On FDs, you get approximately 6% return or 7% return in a year. Here I'm talking about 123% return in a month. Now, if you multiply it by 12, it will come out to be more than 1000% gains. And that is the reason why this video has been titled as how did I make 1000% gain on a stock. So that's one. Second point, I just want to give out a very quick disclaimer that this is not an investment advice. I am not a SEBI registered broker or a trader or an advisor. So please take these videos as a learning exercise. I'm doing it completely for free, right, for your own benefit. So please take it as an educational exercise. Please give it a thumbs up. It would encourage me to make more such videos. So do smash that like button. That would mean a lot to me. Now let me jump into specific strategies of what I'm going to talk about in today's video. So let me first and foremost explain the business and industry fundamentals. Now for this, let me move on to Tickertape, which is one of the tools that I use for analysis. And I use several different tools that I'll take you through in this video as well. But let's start with Tickertape. So let us first and foremost talk about the default probability of that stock. Because any stock that you're buying, it should not be invested in a company that has a very high default probability or a sector where the default probability is high. For example, if you look at oil and gas sector, usually these days, given the entire infrastructure that needs to be built and the way that it is, the oil and gas industry is going through tectonic shift. People are moving towards renewable. So that's more or less a dying industry, so to say, right? So that those kind of projects have very high probability of default. And you can see from Tickertape, a lot of people have done the analysis that the default probability is low, right, in the next 12 months. I'll take you through different parameters also, but I just wanted to quickly touch upon this very important concept of default probability in housing finance companies. Now, if you ask yourself a question that, hey, why do housing finance companies have low default probability? That's a very interesting question. The reason why housing finance companies have a low default probability is because when they give out a loan for you to buy a house, that house acts as a collateral. So these are collateralized loans, right? So unless something like 2008 subprime crisis happens where really bad people are getting loans from banks, from a loan giving perspective, housing finance companies are considered to be very safe. Another exercise for you, and do comment in the comment box here. Now, which companies do you think can give out secure loans? Pause the video and type your answers in the comment box. These would be companies that give out gold loans. For example, there is Manappuram Finance, Muthoot Finance. These give out gold loans, right? So even gold acts as a collateral, right? So very similar. I just wanted to quickly touch upon the point about default probability. That is the first point that you need to know about the business and the industry. Now, the second thing that I want you to notice is that this is a growing industry. Now, this is a generic statement that any analyst like me can make, that, hey, you know what, this industry is growing or that industry is growing. Super easy, right? Because all the industries in India are growing, right? So there is no insight there. But the insight is that there is a reason why this industry is going to grow. And that reason is RERA Act, right? So there is Real Estate Regulatory Authority Bill was actually passed, and you can see it from my screen that it got passed in somewhere around 2017, right? So it was introduced, it was commenced in 2016, and it got remainder of its section approved in 2017, right? Very important point for you to notice, because RERA has been a game changer in the housing development industry. Now, the way the real estate is constructed in India, it used to be very dark and opaque in a way that builders used to charge whatever money They did not used to get plots approved, but they used to just construct houses. There was a bunch of different bad stuff that was happening in the economy. RERA came in and it introduced a little bit of transparency. Is it a perfect system? No. But are things moving in the right direction? The answer is yes, right? So there was a temporary shock when RERA came into effect, and I'll show that on the technical side when I do the analysis. But I want you to notice is that, hey, RERA is a good legislature which actually improves the transparency in the real estate construction domain. Now, when there is more and more transparency in a certain industry, then more good money is going to flow towards that industry. And I'm going to show that while groups like Carlyle Groups are making so much investments in the real estate development market and making investments in companies like PNB Housing Finance exactly because of this reason. So for this, let me move into the fundamental analysis of this stock. Now, in terms of the fundamental analysis, let me first and foremost take you to the investor list. So as I was talking about the Carlyle Group, then they have made massive investments in this company. So where does that feature in, right? So you can see that, hey, here is the shareholding pattern, right? And how it has stayed consistent. For example, there are promoters like Punjab National Bank, which have 32.64% stake in this company. Now, if you move down, right, usually this company called as Quality Investment Holding, if you search for it, you will realize that this is a Carlyle Group company, and they also have made their investments very prominent, approximately 40% investment in this company. Why is that? Because one of the prominent reasons is RERA. Because as more and more transparency improves in the real estate development sector, this is a highly lucrative sector, as I was showing you in the industry analysis section. Since this is a highly lucrative sector, the default probability is low. Therefore, more structured players are going to enter the market where there is more transparency and ease of doing business. That is exactly the reason why a big private equity player like Carlyle Group is going to continue to invest in such a sector and a company. Now, there is another important point that I want you to notice in terms of shareholding pattern, that the overall public, when I say public, it means retail investors, that the overall holding for retail investors is very low. And that is a great sign, because usually retail investors make bad decisions. Now, usually when you see that, hey, the retail investor holding in a particular company is low, it means that the holding is in strong hands, right? So if we do that quick computation, you can see that, hey, Carlyle Group owns approximately 40% of the company, around 32% or 33% is held by Punjab National Bank and other promoters. FII has 24.51. So essentially what I'm getting at is that if you do all the computations, you will quickly realize that retail investors hold very little of this company. So this is a very important insight for you to notice, that who holds this company. If good people are holding this company, then it has great growth prospects. That's point one. Point two, you might have read in the news that Mr. Aditya Puri, who literally grew the HDFC Bank, is actually going to come on in a very prominent management position in PNB Housing Finance, and the stock became rocket after that news, right? So it was not news driven. It was just a matter of time that because companies like Carlyle Group, big private equity players, are investing in such prominent companies, it was only a matter of time that they would bring on someone like Mr. Aditya Puri, right? Maybe the stock would have gained prominence after 6 months. Who knows? Still great returns, right? 123%. What I want you to observe is that, please don't make decisions by looking at newspapers, because newspapers, you get the news very late, right? So that's not a fundamental way of doing any analysis. So you need to understand the numbers, the math behind the numbers, who is doing the investments, why they are making the investments, and you too can make insane amount of money in stock markets. So let's move on from investor analysis to actually looking at the overall view of the company, right? So here I want to point out to a few interesting things. One is that this is a small cap company, right? Because the market cap is very, very small, right? So I'll just draw this out and I'll explain you the concept here. The market cap is very small, right? So it's a very small company. Now, small companies tend to grow aggressively, right? Please note the point that I have never advocated investing only in small stocks or large stocks or big companies. If you're a beginner, yes, start with large cap stocks. But if you're someone who's looking to make good returns, then you need to take a bet on small stocks as well, which are fundamentally strong. That's the important word. So what do I mean by being fundamentally strong? For example, here you can see that the current price is 839. The book value is 527. Please note this, right? When I bought the stock, the current price was 374-ish, okay? And book value was 527. So if I do a price to book ratio, right, that will be 374 to 527, which is less than 1, right? So actually on books, the value of that company was high when I bought the stock. Now it is above 1. It does not mean that, hey, this is necessarily bad, because of course the company can grow, the assets on the book can also grow, so on and so forth. And this is not a real indicator, but definitely when the price to book ratio is less than 1, for a great company, it's a great opportunity for you to invest in that company. And that is precisely when I also decided to make an investment. Now, second point that I want you to notice is something called as ROCE, return on capital employed. Now, if you take a look at any finance company, what happens is that the ROCE is usually around 5 to 6%. Now, let me show that to you. For example, if you take a look at, so let me just copy paste this. So, okay. So if you take a look at something like the biggest bank in India, which is HDFC Bank. Okay. And let us do the same analysis there, right? So let me clear this out. Okay. So if you take a look at this, the ROCE is 6.76%. It means that how effectively the company is using its capital that has been given to it. Now, why is ROCE 6.7% here? Because HDFC Bank Limited gives wide variety of loans and there are a little bit of defaults here and there. But with housing finance companies like PNB Housing Finance, the default probability is low because of the nature of the industry that I earlier talked about. So the ROCE becomes very positive. It's more lucrative to give out housing loans. So this is the second key point that I want you to notice. Okay, so jumping back, there are some more fundamental points that I want to quickly discuss with you, which is the growth of the company, right? Because this brings us to the concept of PE ratios, which is a very important concept for you to understand if you're looking to make investments in the stock market. So first and foremost, I would want you to observe that, hey, this company generated revenues of 308. That's it. Okay. In 2010. Now look at how much money this company has been generating in 2021. What does this show? Right? It literally it has become like 20 times, 30 times almost, right? In a span of 10 years, 30 times. That's insanity, right? I mean, it is growing at such a massive pace, right? And is it growing profitably, right? So number one, is the company growing? The answer is yes. Is it growing profitably? So you need to take a look at the net profits. Again, the net profits have become 15 times in 10 years. Can you imagine, right? When I tell people that, hey, in 5 years, your portfolio gets doubled, people laugh at me. They say that, you know what, at retail investors, you can't double your portfolio. Now here, there are companies that are exhibiting 15 times profit in a matter of 10 years, right? So I fail to understand that how people assume that retail investors can't make more than 15% return. They can if you understand the entire scenario holistically. So this is the second key point, that the company knows how to grow. Now this is a very important consideration, and let me go back to my analysis, right? Now here you will see something called as price to equity ratio, right? Stock PE, right? So it's written here, it's 15.3. Now usually when the PE ratio of a company is less than 30, it's considered, generally speaking, a good time to buy, right? Important point to note here is that the PE of certain companies can be very high. For example, let me show you another example here, right? So let us search for HUL, right? Hindustan Unilever, right? Now look at the stock PE. It's 67.3, right? Now if you just look at PE and you assume that, you know what, HUL is a bad company to invest in, you will lose out on a lot of money. It is a good company. You just need to buy it at dips. It's a very good company to invest in. We'll do a separate analysis on that. But the point that I want you to highlight is that some companies command very high PE ratio because they are very high growth companies. Now, if you end up finding a company which is trading at a low PE but is super high growth, the way I showed it to you, that hey, for PNB Housing Finance, the revenues are growing massively, the profits are growing massively, and it is a high growth company and trading at a lower PE. When I bought it, now the price has gone up, right? Now the price is trading at 839, but when I bought it, it was like 374. So the stock PE was even lower than this, right? So I bought it at such a low PE, and I will wait for the PE to hit like 30, 40, or at least at a relatable note, and then I will sell my stock. So that is another important key fundamental analysis point that you need to understand. Fundamental analysis does not mean that, hey, just look at the PE. If PE is less than 30, buy it. If it's above 30, sell it. No, it just goes into the parameter. This is the second key point that I want you to notice in terms of doing your fundamental analysis. Now, let me quickly summarize. So point number one is that PNB Housing Finance is actually in a high growth industry. That's point one. It is backed by really good investors who are bringing on better management. The fundamentals of the stocks are really good still, in my opinion. This is again not an investment advice. Now, fourth, if you ask me that, hey, do you see this company falling? Then you need to do the peer analysis. So let us jump back to Tickertape and let me try to show you some very interesting points here in terms of the peer comparison. So if you look at the valuation and PE ratio of similar companies, right now I use the Pro feature on Tickertape, so I am getting this feature. I'm not sure this will be available to you as a basic user because I make like a lot of investments, so therefore I have the Pro plan here. Now here you need to understand that how does PNB Housing Finance compare with other peer companies. So let's do this quick comparison. You can see that the PE ratio of PNB Housing Finance is approximately 14, HDFC is approximately 25, right? Which gives us a very good measure that hey, if the person who has got HDFC to a certain echelon, which is Mr. Aditya Puri, if he is joining PNB Housing Finance, the stock P is likely to go to 24, right? So I mean, that is a very normal assumption to make, right? And this is the reason why I haven't sold this stock yet, not one single stock yet. Okay. Now, LIC Housing Finance, Aavas Financials, etc., they are like peer companies, and it gives you an understanding at what price to book value it's trading, what PE ratio is it trading at. So you can do this peer comparison and try to come up with an external analysis at what price point you would be exiting the stock. Right now, let us jump to the technical analysis, and I'm going to show you at a broad level how technical analysis work and how you can end up identifying a good entry and exit point for stocks like PNB Housing Finance. For this, I use a tool called as Tradingview, and I'm going to show you how exactly am I using it. So essentially what I'm doing here is that I'm taking a look at 1 day candle, right? So I'm not looking at 1 month candle, I'm looking at 1 day candle, and let me just present an overall analysis for a 5-year valuation. Okay, so you can see that hey, from like approximately in like 2017, this stock used to trade at 15.15. So this stock has a history of trading at a very high price, right? So it's not the first time that the stock has traded or given massive growth from like approximately 370 to 830 in my case. It has in the past gone up to 1550. So this would give investors the confidence now that hey, you know what, it's trading at 830, 840, very high likelihood that it might go to 1550 if all the scenarios are playing out well. Now then you need to ask yourself a very simple question that hey Akshat, why did this stock fall so much, right? It literally came crashing to 145. What was the reason? Now there were manifold reasons here, and you can see a very large volume here, right? So let me try to highlight this, right? So you can see that the entire sales, a massive sale happened here with massive volume. People sold the stock like crazy. There must have been something wrong, right? This was the time there were two things playing out here. Number one, the RERA came into full effect. So the existing set of developers had to abandon a lot of their projects. For example, you might know that majority of the real estate development that happens in India, it happens through black money, right? Unfortunately, right? That's the reality. Now, majority of these development projects got stalled, right? People were unable to pay back the money. They just stalled. Some real estate developers took the hit and they quit the business altogether. So that was a time for prominent churning or a structural change in the industry. Is that change good or bad? Short term, it's very bad. Long term, it's very good, right? Why short term really bad? Because existing players, the way they operate, that operating model will change entirely. There will be short term pain. Long term, why it's good? Because top private equity players like Carlyle are going to enter the stock market and invest in such companies and generate massive returns. So that was reason number one. Reason number two, that as I showed you, that PNB Housing Finance is a small cap stock. Now there was recategorization of multi-cap funds. Now in simple terms, what this means is that if you're a mutual fund manager, you can buy small cap, mid cap, large cap in any proportion because you own a multi-cap fund. But SEBI came out with a rule that, hey, you know what, you need to tell them how much small cap you're buying, mid cap you're buying, and large cap you're buying. So you can't do that and categorize everything in multi-cap. So there was a lot of selling that happened due to this recategorization for small cap stocks. So the stock price came down crashing. Now if I actually zoom into the stock and I show you the performance of the last 6 months, that is where the interesting things start to happen. You will see the sales volume here, right? You might see, let me just again highlight that you might see massive sales volume being accumulated right from here, here. Again, there was like a lot of sales volume. So whenever buying happens with excellent sales volume, that literally tells you that, you know what, this stock is going to go up, right? So that's our technical indicator for you to enter into a good stock, which is fundamentally strong. Now this is something called as rounding pattern. What it means that it is an accumulation phase, right? Now, how do you accumulate phase? It's not as if that if, for example, a big investor like Rakesh Jhunjhunwala wants to pour in 5,000 crore in this company. It's not as if that he'll open his trading account one day and buy all 5,000 crores of stock. They will take positions, they will do hedging, and there is a lot of stuff that goes in the back end, which is beyond the scope of this video. But what I'm trying to tell you is that whenever you see this kind of a rounding pattern, it's a good analysis for you to assume that, hey, you know what, prominent investors are actually accumulating this stock. It will go down in the short term a little bit, but eventually it will come back up, right? So I usually tend to accumulate stocks usually in this phase because you never know when the circuit might be there. So what is happening here now is that, hey, this entire rounding has not even been complete, right? And it has literally took off, right? So it took off by like 20% here. Now it's taking literally like 10% each day. It is growing, this stock, right? And it has been doing that for the entire week. Now what happens here is that if you actually want to accumulate your stock in this phase, it becomes impossible because there is something called a circuit, right? Now, if a stock gets stuck in a circuit and if you place your buying order, you can't even buy it. And same happens at the downside, that if you want to sell the stock and if it gets stuck in the circuit, you can't sell it. So very important for you to understand these basic technical patterns. A lot of people start analyzing RSI, MACD, whatnot, doji, hammer, all this. It's fine. I'm not saying that, hey, don't overdo the technical analysis, but everyone is able to do technical analysis. So you don't have any competitive edge. It is very important to do fundamental analysis, business and industry analysis, understand the numbers. That is much more important. Technical analysis just acts as a confirmation point, at least in my style of investing. So I hope these technical parameters were also clear to you. I try to explain it in a very simple concept. I can do a separate class on what technical fundamental parameters are. Give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and please comment. Only then I'll do it. Now moving on to the final part. Till what point am I going to hold the stock? So let me jump back to Tickertape again for this analysis. So this chart, according to me, is a very, very powerful tool for me to conduct this analysis. So as I showed you earlier that, hey, I'm going to continue monitoring the PE ratio. It's not as if that every day I'll wake up and spend 5 hours tracking the PE ratio. No, right? I hardly spend like 15 minutes in the stock market every day. I read a lot. I keep up with the news. So in terms of selling the stock, so first and foremost, I'm going to take a look at the PE ratio and I would continue to monitor it. I'll continue to monitor its growth. That's point one. Right. Second, I'm going to continue to monitor the default probability. Now, this is a very difficult matrix for me to keep a track of. So I'm going to rely on tools like Tickertape for me to do that. Right. Till the time this is a good indicator, if there are any major developments or issues happening with the stock, I'm sure that I'll get more information from such tools. I will also try to keep the growth score in check. Right now, this is again a very, very important parameter. Now, growth score shows me that how the company is continuing to make money. Right, so doing this peer comparison is very important for me. That's the first key parameter that I'll look at: the PE ratio, PB ratio. I'll look at growth score. I'll look at the default probability. These are some of the parameters that I'll keep in check. This is very important part of my trading ritual. That's one. Second is that I'll continue to monitor the stock from a fundamental analysis point of view, in the sense that, for example, I'll look at the activities of Carlyle Group. Are they making investments in some other stocks or some other relative stocks? How is their portfolio changed? Because one of the key reasons why people are believing in PNB Housing Finance is that it is managed by Carlyle Group. They're going to bring people like Mr. Puri. So these are some of the parameters that I'll look at. Then I'll try to make an exit. But for the time being, unless something dramatic happens, I will hold this stock till the time it reaches that 1500, 1600 levels, and I will 5x my money. So I hope you learned a lot from this video. Again, big request, please hit the like button. Would really mean a lot. And please comment if you would want me to continue to make such videos. And I will see you on the next video.